Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel for another track guide. Today we'll take a look at the ARCA Menards car around Kansas Speedway. And it's like Dorothy said in The Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home. And she meant Kansas Speedway, even though it wasn't built yet. She was tapping her heels together to try to get here in the future. Give you a quick rundown about what we'll talk about today. We'll discuss car feel, the qualifying lap, track seams, tire wear, and a little bit in depth on corner entry. Light disclaimer at the top of the video, every time a series returns to a track after several weeks, you might find that the lap times vary from what you'll see in this video. And that could be due to the weather conditions, maybe changes to the tire model, or the track surface, all kinds of things. So if the lap times that you're getting and seeing that week don't really match up with the video, that's okay, but a lot of the tips on how to use the track and get the most out of the car and how to run certain lines will all be pretty much the same, so it's still useful. Just don't get too hung up on the lap time part. Alright, perfect. So with that out of the way, we'll go ahead and take a look at the qualifying lap and talk about car feel and more in depth about the qualifying lap after we see it in full. Alright, let's dive into this lap. So this is actually my second lap. The out lap and your first lap aren't going to be as fast because you can't build up enough speed. So starting your last qualifying lap, take the high side and you want to rip as much momentum as you can around this top side. It's going to feel pretty loose, but you just got to bear with it. Try to stay in that upper lane. And you want to cut down here because that kind of gets you traveling downhill for a bit and you gain a little bit of speed. So starting our turn in just before this Kansas sign on the wall. You can see that as I turn in, I kind of flick the steering wheel just a little bit and I start letting out of the throttle. Then as soon as I feel the car not rotating as much as I'd like it to, I start feeding the throttle back in. And you can see now I'm holding the throttle pretty steady and I'm doing the work with the steering wheel. So I'm holding the car at this very fine balance where it wants to slip around but I'm not letting it. Then when I feel confident that I can put the throttle down and carry my arc through the corner, that's exactly what you do. You try to do that while you're unwinding the steering wheel. You don't want to be turning harder as you exit. That's just going to wear out those front tires. And it could even have the added effect of making the car feel snappy loose. So make it out of turn 2, carry all your momentum. Then right before the wall turns white again, that's where you want to start turning in. And I'm doing pretty much the same thing I did on the other side of the track, where I hold the throttle enough to let the back of the car start to rotate, and then I release the throttle some to hold it there. Then when I feel pretty confident that I can get back into the throttle and I'm doing work with the steering wheel, that's when you can start to throttle it back up. And I get a bit looser here than I'd like to, but it is possible to hang on to it without losing too awful much speed. You're going to let the car ride up and be aware it might start getting pretty loose as you cross up into this top lane because of the seam in the track. We'll talk about that more in a second. But once you do that, come fire back out of the corner, and then you want to turn down some so that you actually gain some speed from going downhill and you shave distance out of your lap. And that's going to set you up pretty nicely. So what of these seams that I was just talking about? Well, on the top side of the track in this highest lane, there's a seam where the asphalt kind of overlaps each other right here. And it's very bumpy. You can actually see the car bouncing around just a little bit. And that really unsettles the car. You don't have that so much down here in this lower lane. What it does is if you're accidentally sitting the tires right there on that seam, the car feels really skittish and kind of unpredictable. And you have to deal with this in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So it's something to be aware of, especially if you want to run that top side. You've got to make sure that you're above that seam. If you're running the bottom side, you don't have to worry about the seam going from the first and second lane, but you do have to worry about it in the top side of the track. So now that you're aware of the seam, let's talk a little bit about tires and your different lane choices that you've got for this week. So you do have the option of running the bottom side of the track, which is where you would take kind of a wider arc and let the car float down to the bottom of the track about in the middle of the corner and throttle it back up. You can also just rip the top side. Both of them are pretty feasible. As far as tire wear goes, it honestly works out to be pretty close. For example, if you're running the lower part of the track, then you're putting a little bit more stress on that right front tire, but you are shaving some distance out of the turn because you're not taking the high lane. The opposite of that is if you're running the top side, you're adding some distance to the lap, but you're not turning the steering wheel as hard. So weirdly enough, the tire wear ends up being relatively even here. I would say on fresher tires, you could probably use the first and the second lane. On older tires, everybody's probably going to move up to the second and third lane. You're going to have some people that run the second and third lane off the jump from the green flag, which is kind of what I do, and it seems to work out pretty well. So the advantage of using the lower portion of the track is that you're cutting out some distance, and you might be able to gain on some people that way. If you're using the top side of the track, then you can carry more momentum through the corner, so you can run them down on the back stretch and the front stretch. So it's a really cool cat and mouse game. If you do decide that you want to run the low line for most of the race, I would recommend moving your brake bias like way back. Because you're going to end up using the brakes just a little bit on a really long run. And you're not using the brakes to slow the car down, you're really using the brakes to try to help the car rotate. And I mean minimal braking, so not a lot at all. You're also going to want to back your corner entry up just a little bit and make sure you arc the corner and don't hurry it down to the white line if you're going to run that low side throughout the race. If you run like our qualifying lap every time, you're going to wear that right front tire out in no time. If you want to run the top side of the track, then I like to actually turn in away from the wall and let the car float up towards the wall just a little bit. That helps it loosen up and it keeps me off of the wall, and I can throttle back up and carry the momentum all the way around the corner. And I do that in both ends of the track. And I do have a little example about what that looks like here. So I've opted for the top lane in 1 and 2, and I get the momentum around the 14. And I'm just able to get to his outside, but I get kind of stuck behind the Kodiak car. But I really want to take this top lane again. So you can see I turn down off the wall just a little bit, and I let the car float back up as I throttle up. Again, that helps keep it loose, stay off that seam, and you can see how much momentum that I am able to carry around the corner. So that's top side. So what about the low side? The low side is actually very tricky to get right, but you can know that you're overdriving it by kind of checking for this. So if you go down into the corner and you're trying to turn it in and you carry too much throttle or too much speed, the car just rides up towards the wall, and that's absolute hell on that right front tire. So try not to do that. The other situation that you might run into is, once again, say you overdrive the corner entry, you've got too much throttle, and you're trying to add some more steering to make up for it, and the back of the car wants to swap places with the nose of the car and spin around. You can kind of save it, but it will cost you some time, and it's a lot harder on your tires to constantly be sliding them quite that much. Alright, well that does it for today's track guide video. Thank you all so much for sticking around this long. I hope you learned some more tricks for the track that you can use and keep in your toolbox. If you found something helpful or liked the video, if you wouldn't mind leaving a thumbs up, and consider subscribing if you want to stick around for more videos like this. That's such a huge help when it comes to the overlord that is the YouTube algorithm, so I really would appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you all around for the next video. Good luck this week. Have a good one.